The Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew, the 2nd chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who was born King of the Jews? For we observed his star and its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea. For so it had been written by the prophet, and you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler, who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called the wise men and learned from them the exact time that the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and seek diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
You may be seated. Up until the moment that the wise men arrive at the house where Jesus is, the story of Jesus is a wholly Jewish story. Holy as in complete, and holy as in set apart, but holy as in complete. It was a Jewish story up to this point. Joseph was Jewish, Mary was Jewish, Jesus is Jewish, the shepherds are Jewish, the innkeepers were most likely Jewish. The only non-Jew in the story is Caesar, who sends out the census requirement that forces Mary and Joseph to go to Bethlehem. So up until the wise men's arrival at the house where Jesus is, this is a wholly Jewish story about the Jewish Messiah coming from Jewish prophecy in the Old Testament. But when the wise men show up, these non-Jews, these Persians, these mystics, these travelers from thousands of miles away, who would by no way, shape, or form in any other way hear of the birth of Jesus except through the divine intervention of prophecy and the rising of the star, this is no longer a Jewish story. The story of the Messiah is no longer just passed on through the bloodline of parents to children. The story of the Messiah is no longer just read in the Torah at the synagogue. The story of the Messiah is no longer just something kept in Jewish tradition. The story of the Messiah is now unleashed. God's work in the world is unleashed. It is opened up to now what would be the Gentiles. And the Gentiles is anybody who's not a Jew. So, my fellow Gentiles, it's nice to see you all here today, unless you come from the Jewish background. If so, I'm sorry, I don't mean to infer that you're a Gentile. Gentiles are anybody who is not Jew. And now with the wise men showing up, this is God's statement to say that this baby born in Bethlehem, that this Messiah didn't just come for the house of Israel, but this Christ child came for the entire world. Now, that's awesome. It's incredible. If the wise men hadn't showed up and this story wasn't given over to the Gentiles, then Lord knows what we'd be doing this morning. I don't know, maybe getting ready for the playoffs or eating leftover ham. Who knows? But God needed a vehicle to tell this story. Because, well, it's not passed down from generation to generation as it was in the Jewish Messiah story. God needed another way to share this. And so as Paul tells us, God institutes this thing called the church. So that through the church, the wisdom of God in its rich variety might be made known to the rulers and authorities in the heavenly places. Through the church, through the gathered community, which then leads us to question, what exactly is church? I'm sure we could all have an answer for that, but I want to turn to the answer that was crafted about 1700 years ago. We will make that statement here in a little bit, as put forth from the Council of Nicaea in the Nicene Creed, the four pillars of the church. Did you know the church had four pillars? There are four pillars to the church. The church is, and as soon as I start saying it, you're going to be right there. One, holy, Catholic, and apostolic. Those are the four pillars of the church. Those are the four pillars that God has chosen to then be the vehicle of proclaiming not only the birth of this Christ child, where we are at now, but the life of this Christ, the death and the resurrection of this Christ, and then the expansion of the Holy Spirit. So the church is one, holy, Catholic, and apostolic. We'll break that down here for just a minute so that we really have a clear understanding of what this whole church thing means. First, the church is one. There is one church. One church. Now, the church is not singular. There are many churches. But there is one church. One expression of God throughout the world. Let me help you. I was trying to think of a way to help you visualize this a little bit better. And I just talked about cookies earlier. Okay, so let's talk about cookies, shall we? Cookies are always a good thing to talk about. Now, there's only one cookie. A cookie is a thing that is baked in some kind of small, bite-sized piece you can pick up. Usually it takes about 12 minutes in the oven. It's baked on a cookie sheet, right? That's what makes it a cookie. Now, there are many different kinds of cookies, right? Chocolate chip, and wedding, and Italian, and peanut butter, and those really nice snappy ones with the chocolate and the little powdered sugar on top. They take like 2 days to make. There are all kinds of cookies. So cookies aren't singular, but there is one cookie. You cannot call a cherry pie cookie any more than you could call tiramisu a cookie or beef popcorn, right? Church is the same. Now you can visualize it. Now whenever you think about going to church, you think about the cookies. And if you think about them enough that you make them, I like peanut butter. Same. So the church is one. There is one church. One. Now that one church has many different expressions. And this is where we really start to break out. Is that one church has many different expressions. So whether that church worships in silence, whether it worships with an organ or a praise band, whether it dances or sits, those are all legitimate expressions of that one church. And you and I, brothers and sisters, as part of that one church, if we are here, or we are in Tennessee, or we are in Iceland, or we are in China, we are still part of that one church. And so when our brothers and sisters gather for worship in Sri Lanka, where it is persecuted, and they are doing it in fear, well, they're doing it in hiding, they're not necessarily doing it in fear, we worship with them. We stand with our Coptic brothers and sisters in Egypt as they proclaim the message under an iron fist. One church, many expressions. It is not singular, but it is one. Because God did not want the church to be fractured in its proclamation to the point where Jesus was cropping up so many different ways and so many different times. So the church is one. Many expressions of one church. The church is holy. And what does it mean to be holy but to be set apart? The church is set apart. It is different. What we do here is different. What we do here is set apart for something bigger than ourselves. And we need to be set apart. Because we are coming before the divine, the maker of heaven and earth, the one to whom we can only think about grasping the hem of his robe. Her robe. God's robe. Let's go that way. We are holy. We are set apart for something important. In the midst of that holiness, we can do a grand amount of things, but we do it in the midst of holiness. So we are one. We are set apart. We are set apart for a singular purpose. And that purpose is to be the cradle for the Christ child. Because no other cradle exists. There is nobody else who is doing this whole Jesus thing except the church. Because Jesus is the head of the church. That is why the church was instituted. To be the cradle for the Christ child. And we are Catholic. And now, if you look in your hymnals, when we get to that point, you'll notice that Catholic has a little C. Okay? The word means universal. Okay? We are a universal church. The church stems throughout all. So it is one, it is holy, and it is universal. So, like I said earlier, whether we're worshiping in Alliance or Florida, which is kind of okay. It's a little cold out there right now. Or in Mexico, or in Antarctica, this church is universal. And the Lutheran expression of this church, we are connected throughout the entire world through different Lutheran expressions in Canada, and in Europe, and in Russia, and in China, and down in South America. As one expression of this universal church. So we're everywhere. God's church is everywhere. That's the point. There is no place where God is not. So there is no place where the church is not. And we are apostolic. We are passed down. The story is told from generation to generation. It is given from one apostle to another. That is the process that God has chosen. God has chosen those who have gone before you to tell you the story. You are here because someone has told you the story of Jesus. Somewhere in your history, someone told you the story of Jesus. I was blessed enough to be told that story by my parents, and that story started when I was baptized 3 months after I was born. It actually started before that, but it's a good place to begin. And that story has continued all the way through. Someone told you the story, and part of that means that you tell someone else the story. It is apostolic. It is passed from generation to generation. Story to story. This is how God has chosen this proclamation to happen. This is what it means to be church. Now, are there many different expressions? Do we do church differently? Yes, we do. And that's okay. We don't all have to be the same. But we are all part of those four pillars. We all stand under that one big roof of being one holy, Catholic, and apostolic. Because you and I, brothers and sisters, are how God has chosen this Christ child to be revealed to the world. We don't get a star. It'd be really cool if we did. Right? We don't get a booming announcement from heaven. We don't get angels singing over shepherds. That'd be pretty cool too. We get the story. We get the story that someone gave to you. And that gift was given to you for you to give to someone else. And like I told the kids with them candles, you give that story to someone else, it's not going to diminish your story. It's actually going to make it grow. This is who we are. This is what God has chosen to reveal Christ to the Gentiles. You and me, the church, the wisdom and authority of God coming forth from one holy, Catholic, and apostolic church.